folks on the call today, we're actually at capacity, is do a little quick sound check and make sure things are coming through loud and clear for all of you. Tamara, can you hear everything?
I can hear you, Amanda.
Fabulous. Okay, great. WebEx tends to be a little haunted, everyone. So as part of our housekeeping items, if something wonky happens on your end of things, either get booted out or it's starting to sound really funny, let Tamara know in the chat box and log out and then dial back in. Occasionally that happens with WebEx. Again, it tends to be a little bit haunted, so just want to make you aware of that. We're going to go ahead and get started now because we have a lot of information to cover. I tend to be a fast talker, so I'm going to go through some housekeeping items first, and then I'm going to try to pause as much as I can in between slides to give folks an opportunity to ask questions in the chat box. So let me just pop over to the screen share so we can get the presentation started. And so I'm just going to do a quick check-in once more with Tamara. Everything okay? You can see things clearly with the screen?
Yeah, I can.
Great. All right, so officially, thanks everyone for joining us here today on, I think it's Tuesday, yep. So a little bit about Patient360 before we get started. First of all, as many of you know, Patient360 is one of the longest and first original 16 CMS qualified registries. So we've been around a while, and we've seen a lot. We've seen the program evolve. We've seen it change. So we have a lot to talk to you today about those changes and how the program has evolved. And real quick, before I start more with that, if you do have questions, please just go ahead and pop them into the chat box to Tamara. Tamara will be able to weave them in and let me know and ping me if there's questions. We'll try to answer them throughout the session. If we don't get to all the questions, we will email you a response after the session, not to worry. So we'll keep you posted on that. We're also taking requests for the next Lunch and Learn that we have. I think this is kind of funny, so that you all don't have to sit in silence. We'll make sure that we have some music playing in the background to make WebEx more exciting. Doug, who you'll talk to in just a few minutes, our clinician, has suggested Steely Dan, so maybe we'll think about that. Anyway, just trying to weave in a little humor to this because it's not the most exciting topic, but we'll try to make it fun and conversational so that you feel comfortable asking us questions. So we've been around for a while. Back when this program, I don't know if any of you are aware, but it used to be called PQRI. Back in something like 2006 when Doug, who is our CEO, who will be talking in just a few minutes, he's our CEO and clinician. He actually began the registry Patient360 way back when it was PQRI. So we're going to talk more about this long-standing history throughout the presentation because it's really paramount in terms of the program knowledge that we have and the relationships that we've leveraged with CMS over the years to influence better program structure and development, as well as our connections with older CMS contractors. As a matter of fact, we were just at, and we'll talk a little bit about this throughout the meeting because little tidbits and nuggets will come up. We were with CMS in person 2 weeks ago in Baltimore. They had, a general meeting for all registries, and then on the third day they had what's called a QCDR lean event, and a lean is a type of meeting that you have to reduce waste and to improve processes. And so they invited us and among maybe 10 other QCDRs, that was it. Out of the 110 that were there for the original meetings, 10 stayed on, and Patient360 was one of them. So we have a lot of relationships with CMS that we're able to leverage, and that's really beneficial for our clients because in a lot of cases it helps with getting accurate information and correct answers. Part of that is, and many of you may or may not know this, but it's important for you to know as a client, as a provider, as someone that's trying to understand and navigate through the program, CMS contractors for this program change all the time, in fact, yearly. So there are not as many that are around in terms of understanding program knowledge from the legacy program. And it does make it difficult, I think, for if you're not a registry or you don't have a long-standing relationship with CMS to get the answers that you need in a timely manner and to really understand what's going on with the program. And so that's really the value add that we have in terms of we leverage those relationships. We work a lot with the folks in CMS, and we do understand how the contracting groups work. So we know who to go to and when to go to them to get the answers that are needed and to get accurate answers. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about who is Patient360 in the world of QCDR and registry. We have been around for a long time, and we're here to help you. We have been a leader in this reporting business, as I said. All of our, and a lot of folks say, well, how do you know that you've had a 100% or 99.9% success rate? There are tools on the CMS website and other ways in which you can check and look and see all of the provider NPI, TINs that you have submitted for as a registry, if they have accrued or received a payment adjustment or not. And very, very rarely, and it's usually only because it's a user error of incorrect NPI or whatnot, have any of our providers who have worked with us received a payment adjustment. So we've been doing this for a long time. And in fact, now we know that for 2017 MIPS, we've got a lot of folks who are actually going to end up receiving a bonus. So we're pretty excited about that. Just so everybody knows, we've got our regular qualified registry, and I'm designating this so you understand, okay, I don't understand QCDR versus registry, what's what. So there's qualified registry, and qualified registry has been around, like I said, since 2006, back with PQRI, and then it morphed to PQRS. That's called full registry reporting, qualified registry. And that's where we report all of the quality measures and the ACI and the IA categories as well across all specialties. And we'll talk about this later. There's something like 270 qualified registry measures that are available, right? And then around about, I'd say in 2014, we were at a CMS meeting right when they were getting ready to launch the MIPS program. And when they were doing that, you know, that's when we really started talking about, okay, how can we branch off as a QCDR to really impact our subspecialties that we work a lot with for pain management? And so that's when we submitted our own QCDR measures for approval with CMS. So those are additional measures to the regular qualified registry measures. So for folks that are on the call that are not, you know, maybe OMM and OMT or pain management specialties, you would be utilizing our qualified registry option because you can submit across any specialty. So we cover all the measures. But if you do happen to be pain management, and I see a lot of familiar faces on the call today, hi, a lot of our folks that have worked with us in 2017 and previously, if you're doing pain management and pain management specialties, you're probably going to be working with our QCDR, which means that you're going to be utilizing additional measures. That's all that means. So I like to just say, hey, what are we going to cover on this call today so everybody understands what's going on? What am I going to walk off the call knowing, and why is this important to me? So the first thing we're going to talk about is why do providers need to report in MIPS 2018? I think that it can be a frustrating program, so we're going to do some management of expectations and level set a bit, talk a little bit about the theory and the philosophy of the program, which there is a spirit of the program that CMS tries to convey. And it's actually not a bad spirit. We think it's lofty, but, you know, to improve outcomes, and Doug's going to talk just a bit about that shortly. We all, as providers, as clinicians, in practices, we want to improve outcomes of the patients. We want all that good stuff. What we are going to talk to you about today is that theory and that philosophy of the good stuff, of the spirit of the program to improve outcomes, and really what that actually means from shifting the actual philosophy of the program to the practice of the program, and try to talk you through finding the balance in that, because, you know, the program has morphed a lot from reporting for reporting's sake, but there's still a lot of burden on the clinician. And whilst, even though CMS has tried to remove some of that burden, it's a living, breathing program, and it's a brand new program, really. I mean, it was launched in 2017. It certainly isn't perfect. So what we really try to do with you as a registry, especially because we're physician-owned and operated, and we've been around the program for so long, we know what CMS wants, and there are a lot of folks at CMS that are really trying to do the right thing and trying to make things easier for folks. But we also understand, especially Doug, because he's lived it all this time, the pragmatic, what is the day-to-day reporting like, and how to deal with that. So as a registry, we are uniquely positioned to try to convey to you what CMS is really looking for, while also helping you find the balance of how to report with integrity and do the right thing as much as possible while finding that balance and not overburdening you. So we really try to constantly and consistently every day when we're working with our clients, help them find that balance. So that's the why, and we're going to talk about that. And you're going to walk off the call knowing why you should be reporting in 2018. And then we're going to talk about what it actually looks like, the mechanics, what's changed for the program, take a deeper dive into those changes. We're going to spend about 2 slides on the changes, but just so everyone knows, there's a bunch of stuff out right now from CMS. There's a couple of slideshows, plus we have a blog that we've developed too. So if you need a deeper dive into the changes for 2018 because you're already experienced with the program, we'll do a separate lunch and learn on that. And I encourage you to take a look at our blog because it kind of breaks down all of the changes that we're going to talk about. But again, in the interest of time, we can only spend a couple of slides on those changes today. And then, of course, how to actually get started. So folks are thinking, well, we're in 2018 already, and it's already April. I don't know how that happened. Actually, is it May yet? It's almost May. Anyway, yeah, I almost didn't know what day it was, and now I don't know what month it is. It's one of those weeks. But how to get started, you can still start. So you can, it's not like, okay, we're already into 2018, and I guess I'm lost for this year. There's no hope. There's actually a lot of different options in 2018. It's still fairly flexible. In fact, the minimum threshold for points to avoid the negative payment adjustment is 15 points. So I think for those of you that are familiar with 2017, you had to get at least 3 points and you would avoid the downward 4% payment adjustment. In 2018, you just have to get your minimum of 15 points and that will avoid the downward 5% payment adjustment. So if you're just looking to avoid a payment adjustment and get started because you've never done this before, we will show you our MIPS for Beginners program. Take a brief look at that so you know what you need to do to get started. And for folks that are already working with us, you should be actively engaged in entering data into our portal now. And if you haven't, that's okay. You can start uploading the templates or start sending us your QRDA3 files now. So the quality category, you do need to get started pretty soon so that you're not retroactively going back in June or July and trying to scurry to get all of your data. And we'll talk a little bit more about the reason why that's important in terms of the spirit of the program is we actually have developed our portal in a way that if you are participating fully as an intermediate or a full client, you can see your scores, you can see the analytics right here and now as soon as you put data in real time. So that's going to allow you to think about this. If you're putting data in now, it's going to allow you to see, well, how am I doing? Uh-oh, so-and-so under our TIN is really struggling with this measure and no one else is. What's going on here? You actually have time within the reporting year to impact and to make changes in outcomes if you're actually consistently uploading data into the portal. So it's important for you to think about that in terms of, hey, if I actually want to improve outcomes in the reporting year, I need to be reporting and providing P360 data to the P360 portal so I can assess those analytics rather than waiting until the end of the year when, sure, you'll avoid the payment adjustment and you might even make a bonus if you were performing well, but you're not going to know that because you waited till the end of the year to put everything in the portal. So that's just something to think about. There's still plenty of time to get started, but how early you start and how often you report is going to help you get better scores because everything's in real time when you enter the data into the portal. And finally, we're going to walk off the call knowing a little bit more about how to report with Patient360, what actually needs to be done. So the why providers need to report, really the money and the outcomes, and again, balancing that spirit of the program along with the actual reality of the program. How do we do that with integrity? So we're going to step over and have Doug chat to us, and I think he is really in the best position to talk about the history of this program, where it was, where it's going, the why, and kind of how to pragmatically be able to participate. We'll do it with as the least amount of jading as possible because there are moments in time we can tell you that we have felt your pain as well. But there are some high points and some good things about the program, so we're going to try to cover all of that right now.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate you doing that. Hi, everybody. I did found Patient360 primarily as an educational program to improve quality outcomes long before there was a quality payment initiative or there was even the PQRI. We joked we had microwave popcorn before we had a microwave. And honestly, people weren't terribly interested in it back in the day, and this around 2002, 2003. And we had done some research proving that if you educated patients and gave them the tools and explained to them why the labs were important to understand, why what we were asking them to do is important, that their clinical behavior would in fact become modified. Well, when we moved to value-based care, which really is getting out of the fee-for-service model, I remember everyone was all excited when the sustainable growth rate, the SGR, was removed. I wasn't, because when they did that, instead of getting us caught up on our fee schedule, we are now stuck at a 2002 fee schedule, meaning that we are being paid at a fee schedule that's 16 years old. And when I was doing some lobbying work in Washington for one of my national organizations 3 or 4 years ago, I was asking them, well, do you guys understand that you're paying us at this fee schedule that makes no sense? I said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, how would you like to run your congressional office on a 10 to 15-year-old, amount of money that you were given by Congress, but now you're fast forward into the current age, you wouldn't have enough money to pay your bills, to which every one of the congressional leaders said, oh, you can't look at it like that. I'm like, well, I don't know how the hell else you want me to look at it. I'm trying to run my company here, and I can't make Medicare work if you're paying me at that level. So, and I also knew that when they got rid of the sustainable growth rate, just because of how the quality program was working in the PQRI and the PQRS, and from talking to congressional leaders, that there was absolutely no way that they were going to begin paying us more and more money until they could actually somehow manage and evaluate the quality of the care being provided. Now, I don't really have an issue with that per se, because I think the higher the quality of care, the better you should be reimbursed. But this is also a bit of a game, which we'll talk about. It's a game that you need to know the rules, and if you know the rules, then you can actually improve what you're doing. Now, the impact of the program does increase over time, and you can actually get more bonused or more penalized. And the other odd thing about the program is it skips out 2 years. Amanda was talking about real-time reporting. We were at Medicare offices doing some consulting work with them on the development of the QPP web interface about 2 or 3 years ago, I guess now. And when we were talking with them, we were explaining, I got put into the IT subcommittee with several of the other folks from the committee, and they wanted to be able to do real-time reporting, but they were not being given the resources, nor were they being given the authority to do real-time reporting. So as you all are aware, if you've participated in this program, you get a report into the end of the third quarter with really no time to fix what went on in the preceding 3 quarters, the quality initiatives that you're doing. So unless you have a program or you have the capacity within your practice, and some of the large groups we have their own IT department, which makes that really nice, you have no idea how you are doing. And I like to joke that we're all part of this large in vivo experiment, although it's not a joke. The expectation is that if we do better quality medicine, we will improve the care and we will save money. But no one really knows if that will actually work. But that is the gamble that we're all playing right now, and hopefully that will work out. Right now in 2018, you're looking at a plus or minus 5% adjustment to your 2020 Medicare reimbursement, meaning whatever you're going to make in 2 years will be bonused or penalized based upon how well you did or didn't do in 2018. 2017 will be affecting the 2019 reimbursement. Next slide, please. So the spirit of the program, I think, is really important, because the reality and what we're here to do for our clients is help them succeed. Now, I talked about modifying clinical behavior, and in doing so, the outcomes should improve. That will improve the opportunity for bonus. And then what's supposed to then happen is patient care based upon the performance data will get better, and it theoretically would get better if your comfort with the program increases and the stakes are going to get higher. The problem is some of the best clinical care being provided might have some of the worst reporting, and some of the less good, I won't call it the worst, but less good clinical care might have the best reporting, because those people understand how the game is played and they understand how the score is done. And one of our jobs as a registry, and in the reality of the program versus the spirit of the program, is to help our clients do as well as they can with the data before us. And we have some optimization software that we've been able to use with folks that we can say, let's pull out these patients, because reporting on quote-unquote all patients means 51% of all patients. So we can exclude 49% and bump up what your numbers should look like, and that's completely legal within the program. But in the spirit of the program, all 100% of the people that you see should be getting better, because you got to remember, when this program was founded, the intention was not to come up with a bunch of impediments and a bunch of clinical guidelines just to make our lives a living hell, even though it felt like that when we were practicing medicine, seeing patients day in and day out, because it was yet another thing that we were doing that really wasn't going to give us any real money to speak of, and it was just going to be a pain in the tuchus, and we were supposed to continue to move forward. What they did, though, is they looked at 95% of monies that were spent that were preventable expenses, meaning what could we not have spent money on and still had better clinical outcomes, or where did we spend money that we didn't need to spend money that we realized in hindsight that we didn't have to. So 95% of that money is how they identified what they wanted to use for measures when the Physician Quality Reporting Initiative commenced and became the PQRS. Now, a lot of people have said, well, we should just scrap it and move forward. Well, once it became the PQRS and now the Quality Payment Program, it will literally take an act of Congress for this not to continue to move forward. So this is the reimbursement program. But another important caveat is everyone said, oh, they're going to get rid of fee-for-service. Fee-for-service is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And fee-for-service is here to stay because that is the best way that we can commercially get this rolling until, one day we move to a single-payer program in this country, which I personally don't think will happen just because of the political implications and the lobbyists from all the private insurance companies. But that's a conversation for another time. So in this sense, what I want people to get is that the spirit of the program and how the program is implemented don't necessarily exist in the same congruency, but this duality is there, and we want people to do everything they can do to optimize care, optimize their reporting, and really see what clinical opportunities exist to improve patient care. But at the same time, as a registry and in the best interest of our clients, our job is to help you report optimally so you can receive the largest bonus that is legally and ethically owed to you. Next slide, please. So this is an impact looking at what different practices might be able to get or might be able to lose. And it's good to put these hard figures up there because, there's an old adage, it's never the money, but it's always the money that helps us make decisions. And if you ever wonder why decisions are being made, particularly in healthcare, follow the dollar. When we look at what the impact could be on these large, large for some, I have some practices where I have 1,000 providers, so that would be 10% of them. But if we look at 150, 25, and 5 providers, you can see the impact would be progressively less. I've watched people make decisions that I don't really understand fiscally. I remember when the program first started, it was only the carrot. There were no sticks. And the carrot existed that I had a very large cardiology practice in a very large state in the South. And this particular practice had enough providers that for $65,000 to do their reporting with us, they were going to take home over $700,000 in bonus money. Now, if I had that type of investment that I could do, I would do that all day long. I would continuously do that because that type of ROI doesn't typically exist. That practice chose not to participate, not to take the $750,000 bonus because they quote unquote didn't want the government to have their data. I'm like, it's Medicare data, dude. They already have your data. I'm baffled at your answer, but they chose to leave that money on the table. When I look at these numbers, this doesn't seem like a ton of money when you get to the smaller practices, but that could be a medical assistance base. The practice too could be a significant base of a provider. And when we start looking at that impact, particularly knowing that by 2020, you're going to be being paid on an 18-year-old fee schedule, and I hate to keep hammering that point home, but we can't afford to not get bonused or we're going to be stuck in that fee schedule that's so old that we really could make it work if we wanted to. Next slide. So when we're looking at what we're trying to do, if we can modify provider behavior to improve care, again, part of that large in vivo experiment I talked about, we'll be able to demonstrate those improved outcomes with the quality reporting that we're doing, and it will prove it, and it will prove that we're doing a good job. A lot of the work, Amanda, we talked about is pain and pain management work that we've been involved in, but we do primary care, everything from family practice, internal medicine, pediatrics, and we've done ophthalmology, we've done gerontology. So we report for virtually everyone. And one point I did want to clarify is you can mix and match. You can do some registry measures, you can do some QCDR measures. We just want to find what is the best opportunity for people to be able to participate because we want to improve clinical care and reporting should become a byproduct, and at the end of the day, we'll have positive outcomes. And what we mean by that is the reporting isn't why we're doing it. It's like the old adage, don't study for the test, learn the material. We want the material, we want the clinical implications of what we are trying to do to positively impact your practices, to positively impact your patients and our patients and our practices that we have here so that we can improve what the whole system is doing because that will, in the end, make things better. One of the reasons that a lot of the insurance companies private insurance companies are wanting this is they know that eventually they're going to get some of these patients who are going to have the same positive impact. The problem is when the QPP came about, it wasn't supposed to be working in a vacuum just for Medicare. All of the other insurance companies were supposed to begin participating in the program, and to date, none of them have. They have their own individual programs, but they're not working collaboratively. So until everyone starts doing this together, it's going to still feel very siloed. That's not the intent, but that's unfortunately what we're stuck with. Next slide. So the objective here is that if we can improve clinical outcomes in patient care, we should be able to drive down cost. Again, not proven, but the theory. And what we used to do is pay for reporting. We are truly in a pay-for-performance system now, and we can get no penalty, we can get a decent bonus, or we can get what they're calling an extraordinary bonus. Now, what Medicare considers extraordinary and what I consider extraordinary might be very different, same for you, but
budget-neutral program, really?
Yes, and that budget-neutral piece is critical because they're not adding any new money to this. When they got rid of the SGR, they put a ceiling on this program. So if everybody does fabulously well, there's going to be less and less money for everybody in the organization who did well to get bonused. And they are also asking us to not create measures, and all the QCDR programs, to not create measures that are considered low bar, meaning easy to get to, that have a low threshold for success, because they need people to fail. It's a linear model that they're using. So if 70 or higher gets bonused and you get a 69.99, you don't get bonused. And there could be 69.99, 69.98, and 70.01. 70.01 gets the bonus and everybody below is done. There are no participation trophies in this program. And that is very, very important for people to understand, because as you begin looking at your data and the real-time reporting that we're providing becomes so critically important, because you really need to know how you're doing against your peers. And they'll be looking at your geography, and they'll be looking at your subspecialty categorization by the Medicare standards. Those are what they're looking at to compare you to your peers. And if you don't have the reporting to do that comparative analytic, you're going to have a guessing game until you get into that year when you're going to be bonused, extraordinarily bonused, that you won't know what you're making. You can guess, but you won't really know. So if we can do the reporting the way we need to, and massive clinical improvement is the objective, but the goal is more optimal care, demonstrable improvement, and that theoretically should decrease system costs. So, Amanda, I'm going to hand it back over to you and go from there.
Sure thing. So what does this all mean, and I will try to get, again, that pragmatic, balanced approach of how do we report MIPS in 2018, and what are our options? What if we just simply want to avoid the payment adjustment and don't want to deal with the whole bonus situation? How do we do that? Versus, yeah, we are in a place now where we definitely want bonus. We've been doing this long enough. We know what we need to do. We'll talk a little bit about that as well, because like Doug said, in all honesty, and even at the meeting a couple of weeks ago, it really is like, if you're hitting the minimum threshold, you're going to avoid the payment adjustment. But unless you're way up there in the upper 60s and 70s, it's very unlikely that you're going to get any kind of significant bonus. I mean, it would be so, let's say the minimum threshold is 15 points in 2018 and you got 18 points, you're not going to get a bonus. It says it, technically it says it in the CMS, all the literature that you can read. Anything from, 15 to 69 points, there's potential for just a regular bonus. Really, not so much, because again, like Doug just talked about, it's a budget neutral program. So, if you consider $2 a bonus, it's not really. So you want to either kind of look at the beginner option of just getting sort of your 15 points, avoid the payment adjustment, or you really kind of want to shoot for the stars. So in order to understand, hey, what are my options in 2018? What do I need to do? How do I do it? You want to know a little bit more about what's actually changed from 2017 to 2018. So you want to look at things like the categories that have been added. There's virtual groups. I'll talk about that in a minute, because we talked about that at the CMS meeting, and it doesn't seem like they're actually taking off. So I'll let you know a little more about that. Eligibility requirements, payment adjustments, topped-out measures, minimum threshold. So those are the major things that have actually changed from 2017 to 2018. And some of the stuff has stayed the same and will continue to. A lot of people are like, oh, this is going to go away. Like, we've read a lot of documentation, and different groups are saying MIPS and MACRA, forget about it. It's honestly, like Doug said, unless it's an act of Congress, this really isn't going anywhere. There may be a few small additional changes after year 3, but it's not going anywhere per se. So let's talk a little bit more. Cost category is going to be counted in 2018. And Doug, I might pull you in for this in just a second. This is an interesting concept, because a lot of folks, the registries and QCDRs and different groups are all saying, we know what the 2 measures are for the cost category. Many of you have probably seen them. And if you want to dig deeper, we can send you information on the cost category. But currently, the analytics that we're utilizing, unless we're collecting and capturing data from anywhere and everywhere. Even CMS giggled and said, they're like, no, we don't have an expectation that QCDRs or registries are going to be sending in cost data in any way to CMS. And CMS said to us at the meetings, CMS, we are the only ones that have cost data, and we will assess the cost data after we've received all the other data from qualified registries and QCDR. So if there's folks out there that are like, we can completely and accurately assess what your cost score is going to be, which is only 10% in 2018 anyway, they really can't. And Doug, I don't know if you want to say a little bit more about that, because it's literally impossible unless we have every single nugget of data in order to assess cost accurately. Could make basic estimations, but an accurate assessment of the cost category, A, isn't expected from CMS, and in fact, they probably think it was really odd, and B, isn't even going to be determined by CMS until much later in the year after they've received all data.
Yeah, and it's a very hard thing to determine, because what they're actually trying to quantify is your Part A costs, so your facility-based costs, coupled with the Part B costs. And for most practices, you only have control over a portion of the Part B costs that you are involved with, and maybe some Part A, depending on what surgical specialties or inpatient work you may be doing. But when you look at it, it's actually any care that your patients received from somebody other than you, and you have to somehow be able to guide or direct your patient to go to a high-quality facility or other high-quality specialists or referral people that you're using. And if there are people who are, quote-unquote, spending or wasting money in the eyes of the government, then your patients and subsequently you and your practice could be penalized. So in my opinion, it's a very arbitrary and unfair piece. I mean, most of the day my children do not say that's unfair, because life is unfair, but this is overtly unfair in my opinion, but it is what they're doing. And to Amanda's point, they're going to collect all the data and then run the cost. That feels a little Machiavellian to me, but that's what they're deciding that they want to do. And to also to Amanda's point, and what they've told us at these meetings, is I don't know that they're entirely certain how that's going to work out.
Oh, they're not. They're not at all. And however, good news in terms of collaborating with Patient360 and our partners, you know, we, interestingly, for all the other categories, we developed our analytics and our tools long before CMS did, and we'll talk about that in a bit. They were like, we have a developer sandbox in July. We had already developed and calculated, had an entire portal of analytics that were telling people how they were scoring before CMS's ever even came out. So they're always behind, and it is what it is. It's a government entity, and it takes a while. It's a big engine to turn, and there's lots of different contractors. Certainly, I'm not defending that, because it can be extremely frustrating, but I can see both sides of it, because now I know how many contractor groups they work with. In any case, once we have results after this first year for those clients that have already worked with us in 2017 and 2018, when it is 10% of the score cost, if you share those results with us and we see how they were analyzed, we can then make guesstimates and estimates for the analytics in 2019. So that's just something, it's not that we're unwilling to do that, but it's CMS doesn't even know how they're going to do it yet completely in terms of their analytics. And so we're going to kind of pause on providing analytics on that until we've seen how they've done theirs, because it's so blurry. Real quick question for Doug. Can you remind us what year the fee schedule that we're currently being paid on one more time, Doug, if you would?
It's a 2002 fee schedule. Thanks
so much. And then in terms of the cost category being benchmarked by specialty, I'll get back to you on that. I believe that they're going to, the benchmarks are already benchmarked on quality, and then it's based on how you did across specialties and quality. So I'm assuming that that's going to sort of be tied into those benchmarks, but I will research and discuss with our CMS contractors and find out more about that in terms of benchmarking. Thank you, Julianne. So for virtual groups, folks, if you're a very small practice, super tiny, in theory, this is another theory to practice. It sounded like a great idea. Like you could join with other small or solo providers under a separate TIN and form what's called a virtual group, and then report on measures together. I actually think that there's some real, it's unique, and again, in theory, I like the spirit of it. However, how it's played out, I'm just letting everybody on the call know. When we were there a couple weeks ago asking CMS about it, like, can you give us a sense of how many people have signed up for virtual groups? It was like, they were kind of grinning and like, well, Not very many, very small, very few people have done the virtual group. And I'll tell you, I think it's because, and they heard, duly noted, I said, well, part of then having people sign up for this process, it's unclear. Like, they understand pragmatically, hey, this is a great idea, but how to actually put it into practice. I think in order to be a part of a virtual group, you've got to sign up and have all of the other people in your TIN sign up with you by December 31st. So if you were going to be a virtual group here in 2018, you would have had to have signed up, been approved, done the whole shebang with CMS by December 31st. That deadline is the same for 2019. So just letting you know, if it's something that you're thinking about doing, you really need to talk to us about it early on. Make sure you figured out who are the other folks that you want to work with in their separate TIN so that you can form that virtual group. And not that I'm saying, hey, it's not a good idea, the virtual groups. It's just putting it into practice, I think, has proven to be a bit more difficult than CMS thought it would be, and that some of the virtual groups thought it would be. So that's just a little feedback that we got at the meeting. And if anybody is interested in virtual group, if we've got a few solos on the call that are similar specialties and want to form a virtual group, let us know, and we can kind of talk you through it sooner rather than later, because if you want to do it again for 2019, you have to sign up by December 31st. Eligibility changes, everybody knows these. These are pretty obvious from 2017 to 2018. It was 130,000 and now it's 290,000. There have been complaints though. A lot of folks have been like, okay, do I have to? Don't I have to? Do I have to? Don't I have to? And it's constantly flip-flopping. CMS has heard that message as well, and I think for year 3 and beyond, they're going to try to make those eligibility requirements a lot more consistent. You know, in the inconsistency, they're trying to be flexible, and so it's like, we heard feedback from CMS contractors and whatnot. Well, folks say they want flexibility, we provide flexibility, and then it's not consistent. And so they're also trying to navigate through, well, is the flexibility more important or the consistency more important? And so that's just something to keep in mind, that year 3 and beyond, I think that that's going to become more consistent, but it is frustrating, and they have heard this message as well. In order to know if you're eligible, you really do need to know how many patients you've seen and about what amount for allowable charges. And I think that the eligibility tool, so folks, you've probably seen it on our website. You can just click, because our website is tapped into their eligibility tool. For 2018, they actually have updated that. So it is finally working now for 2018. So if you want to see if you're actually eligible, you want to make sure you can click on that tool. So I'm just letting everybody know that they finally updated it. And they have heard our message, guys, if you're going to change the eligibility requirements, it's really important that you have an actual eligibility tool that's available for people to use at the beginning of the reporting year on January 1st when the reporting year starts, so people know what they're supposed to be doing. Because again, the CMS mantra is report early and often, but yet none of the tools actually work at the beginning of the reporting year. And so that's why folks rely on us as the registry. For example, report early and often. Well, guess what? The CMS API for 2018, that's not going to be ready. That sandbox isn't even ready. None of that stuff is ready until the summer. So people rely on us because we've actually built out and developed our portal and the analytics to be able to start reporting, getting the data into our portal now, and then we get it to CMS later when they've actually got their act together. For this year, just so everybody knows, the quality category in 2018, you do have to report on the 6 quality measures for the full year, but the ACI and the IA, you can still do the 90 days. Just wanted to keep you posted on that in terms of what's new in 2018. There are topped-out measures. We can send those over to you, and what that means is that eventually, over the next year or two, they're not going to be utilized anymore, and they're many of them are, you'll know it's topped out, and we have an actual list of them, that they're really 3 points and they're not. It would be wise for you probably not to select that measure because you're not going to get as many points and they're going to get rid of it anyway. You want to try to select measures that are outcomes-based, that you can show linear progress, linear progression and improvement in outcomes. That's really key. So think about that strategically when you're picking your measures. And like I said earlier in the session, so this is where you want to think about, what perspective do I want to approach this program from? And there's no right or wrong answer. It's what works for you and where your practice is at in terms of understanding the program, having time and resources to participate, what you stand to lose or gain in terms of the slide that we showed for money and whatnot, and where you feel like your outcomes really need to improve. And so there is you have to earn a minimum of 15 points. This is different than last year. It was 3 points, but 15 points is still really easy to achieve. This is not hard, and CMS has provided 4 options or ways in which you can actually achieve the 15 points, and that's our MIPS for Beginners program. So we actually have a program set up and structured that gives you a tour and takes you through how do I get to that 15-point minimum threshold so I can avoid the downward payment adjustment. And then we have other programs that go beyond, okay, I've gotten my feet wet. I understand how this all works now. I'm ready to actually try to go for a bonus and look at your analytics tools and understand my outcomes. So there's a few different ways that you can participate, and just know that, yeah, okay, we're in April, end of April now. All hope is not lost. Even if you still want to go for bonus, you can. You just have to retroactively go back in and pull quality data from January, which is possible to do. We've got software that can help you do that. So in terms of looking at registry reporting, so there's a lot of different options, but if you've determined that it makes sense for you to report via registry and QCDR because you want the leveraged relationships, you need that value add, you want the support services, you want to better understand the measures and what to pick and how to be strategic about it. You want someone, an entity, an organization that's physician owned and operated and can kind of see both sides of the picture. So, okay, we've determined this is what it is that we need to do. You've got a lot more options for measures, so that's really important that you'll have the 240 measures that you can choose from that are quality measures, plus if you're doing QCDR, you can choose our QCDR measures, and you can mix and match. So here's the cool thing, and feel free to keep asking me to expand on this if it's not making sense, because it took a little while for me because I'm not a developer. We have an entire developer team that works on the analytics and the tools and the benchmarking and the CMS API and all that jazz, but I did find out from CMS developers that you can actually mix submissions in 2018. So what that means is, for example, okay, I'm picking 6 measures, but I actually have access to QRDA3 files. And a QRDA3 file is a certain type of file that's produced from your EMR or EHR, if you're utilizing EMR or EHR. And it's kind of automatic. Like, you just download the QRDA3 file and dump it into our portal, and you'll see what your score is for the measures that have been captured for QRDA3. Some people want to mix and match, though, because they'll say, well, my EMR is capturing measures for me, right? But only 2 of them are actually really relevant to my specialty and are kind of making me shine. The other ones, like, our EMR just happens to be capturing, but like they're not, we don't really use this. Like, it's not showing us in our best light, we're a pain practice, but it's giving measure number 5 it doesn't make sense. And so what you're able to do now is you can pick your top 2 QRDA3, let's say, files for those particular measures. And then you might say, I have 2 registry measures that EMRs do not offer. I want to submit data on those using the P360 templates as well. Plus, I want to use a couple of P360's QCDR measures. You can actually use different file formats. So you could submit a QRDA3 file format. You could submit a template for one of our registry measures that your EMR might not offer. And then you can also submit a template for our QCDR measures, all together adding up to 6 measures, and submit that data to us, which we then submit to CMS via their API, and it will show you the full score, and you will actually get the end-to-end reporting bonus on the QRDA3 file formats that you submitted. So it's also able to parse out where there was or was not manual manipulation. And so it's just, they're becoming more flexible in terms of the types of file formats that need to be submitted because of the use of the API. So it allows a lot more development in that sense. So for those of you that have worked for us before, this is a little bit of a change, and it's more flexible. So you have more options in terms of mixing and matching measures to show you your practice in the best light, and to also see, you want to pick measures that are related to your specialty, so you are actually improving outcomes and figuring out where you need to improve. And if you're just picking random measures for reporting's sake, that's not really the spirit of the program. And if that's the case, then MIPS for Beginners is probably a better match for you, because really you're just trying to avoid the adjustment. But outcomes and picking measures strategically probably isn't as important to you right now. That's not a bad or a good thing, and it's no judgment. It's where you are right now with the program. That's all. So it's just something that I wanted everybody to keep in mind. And then when we say real-time feedback, one thing I wanted to point out one more time is, our feedback is only as real time as the information that you get into the portal. And we have been told, and we've had to change a lot of our contracting, and fair enough, like this, it had to be done because it was CMS requested this. We are meant to be providing feedback reports and or a live dashboard to all of our clients at least 4 times a year so that they can see how they are progressing with their data. So we've updated our contracting to reflect, look, you've got to get about half of your data into our portal by around about October, because if there is no data in our P360 portal that you've submitted, we cannot provide the feedback reports to you that CMS has requested we do so. So it's really important for you to be thinking about that CMS mantra report early and often. And now that there's the options of, well, I could use QRDA3 file formats, I could use the template, I can enter the data into the P360 portal, we can customize data entry options. There's a number of different options for you to be able to get your data into the P360 portal more consistently. I'm going to pause for 1 second because I think I may have a question. Any questions, Tamara?
You were able to answer them all, Amanda. Thanks so much.
Oh, and yes, Heather is on our call as well and wanted me to remind everyone, just keeping in mind that it's important for you to look up in the lookup tool, going back to that, am I eligible for this program or am I not? Utilize that lookup tool on our website, and at the end, just remind me, Tamara, to toggle over to the website and show everybody where that lookup tool is. I think it's on our main page, to see if you're eligible, because CMS is not sending out letters to say, hey, you need to participate in MIPS. They're relying on folks to actually know that you need to participate in MIPS. So that eligibility tool, it's easy. You just pop your MPI in and you click on it, and then it shows. And we can even do an example if we have time at the end of the call. We'll use Doug as our guinea pig. And it tells you, hey, you're eligible for the program, you need to participate, or you don't. So those are just a couple of things I wanted to bring to everyone's attention. And again, just really emphasizing, the earlier you get data into us and consistently, the more you can see how you're progressing and use our analytics tools, which are constantly being updated. We've built our user interface a lot. There's a lot of different options now. The portal really does tell you as you go what you're doing right, what's going wrong, things like that. So just keep all of that in mind. So again, getting started is pretty easy. And I'm not going to talk too much about this other than to say, Heather will work with you when you're thinking, well, what's going to be right for me? What I would say is, philosophically, think of the philosophy of the program and think of the pragmatism of actually participating in the program, okay? And if you have limited resources and you're just not quite there yet, you haven't done the program very much, or you only did it as a beginner last year, just not ready to take the leap into trying to go for a maximum bonus, you want to try the MIPS for Beginners program because it will get you to that minimum threshold. And it will really be simple to participate in. To get 15 points, I'm telling you, it is not hard. And there's a tour now. Literally, there's a pop-up window that says, okay, click here. And now you must click here. So it makes it really easy to do the MIPS for Beginner program for 2018. And then in 2020, you'll have avoided that downward 5% payment adjustment. So I just wanted to let everybody know that there is no judgment here if you choose the Beginner program. It's CMS wants to be flexible for people that really just aren't sure that they can qualify or make that huge bonus yet. Looking at intermediate and 360, the biggest differences for these, and Heather will talk to you more about that if you're trying to decide, well, what's better? You do get a score calculator for MIPS intermediate, so you can see how you're scoring, but you're utilizing our template options. So if you really want to move to QRDA3 file formats and uploading things without manual manipulation, more interoperability, and earn the end-to-end bonus points, then you want to look at the 360 program. And that also provides, you'll actually be able to see a breakdown of the benchmark and the scoring analytics.
And Amanda, let me add that if you have an EMR, most EMR companies can get you a QRDA3 file even if you don't know what that means, and I'm not saying that offensively because I didn't when it first came out either, and I've been doing this for a while. So if you ask either your value-added reseller or your EMR company themselves, they should be able to get you that QRDA3 file. And usually there's not a cost, but there may be. So just something to be aware of.
And another thing for those of you that have developers, you may want to think about, and for whatever reason, I do think that a lot of people still choose our template option, and I honestly think it's because they want to be able to manipulate. And look, we guide you and we tell you the balance of the program. It is not illegal, although CMS has said they don't want folks to cherry pick. There are folks that say, I'm using your template and I'm reporting on what the rule is for 2018 is you must report, this is the written rule, on 60% of all of your patients for each measure for your group. If you choose to report on your best 60% of your patients and leave the 40% of terribly performing patients off, that is not illegal. It is our job to tell you it's the spirit of the program to report on all of your patients and not to cherry pick, but it's also, we are balanced and we know what occurs to let you know if you choose to use templates, people use templates and they report on 60% of their patients, and there is manual manipulation because you're picking out of your EMR or your practice management system which 60% of the patients that you're reporting on for each measure. We're not saying right or wrong, we're simply telling you what is the statute, what is the expectation, and what are the options.
And Medicare knows this is happening, guys. It's not, this isn't new news to anyone. This is part of the gamesmanship I was talking about earlier.
Yes. And I mean, if you choose to do it that way, though, it's a trade-off, because then you don't earn, if you're using the templates and you're not using QRDA3, or you're not using, for example, we have a submission API as well. Patient360 has a submission API that we can set up with you where we're pulling your data automatically. If you choose to use the templates, you don't get the end-to-end bonus, right? So it really depends. Again, if you think you can get end-to-end bonus on every single measure, that's an additional 6 points. Plus, if you're picking outcome and high priority, so you really want to be in a place where you're thinking strategically about what's going to be the best option for you and what the best measures are. And so we can have deeper discussions about that, but it's just something to keep in mind. Think about where you are as a group and strategically the types of measures that you're picking, and then that might help better inform you of which method or mechanism you want to actually report the measures. You may decide, like I said before, we want to get end-to-end bonus on 2 of them because we know these are our stellar ones. We know no matter, even if we're submitting them automatically with QRDA3 files, our performance is amazing. But you might say there's a couple other measures that we need to improve on, and we only want to submit 60% of our patient data on templates. So the option exists to do both and submit all of them. So again, these are the different options with Patient360, and as you know, we're also a QCDR, we're running low on time, so we will leave this QCDR to another discussion, but all of our measures for QCDR are actually listed on our website, as are the specifications, so you can see what you need to do for the numerator and denominator for those measures. When you're ready to sign up, you'll contact Heather in our business development office, and she is here today with us. Hi, Heather. And she will help you get started and decide on which package, and you can have conversations with her about what makes the most sense based on where you are right now, and if you've reported in the past, your eligibility requirements, things of this nature. So very briefly, just a reminder, we have all those registry measures, which is somewhere in the upper 200s. We have the 7 QCDR measures. You can mix and match. You can do all PACEs and categories. So a lot of folks are like, okay, as a registry or a QCDR, can I just submit quality with you? No, you can submit everything with us. And I think people like the one-stop shop. Even though it is okay for you, for example, some folks are like, well, I submitted my ACI and my IA measures already in the new QPP system. That's totally fine. You can do that if you want. A lot of folks, because the UI, the user interface with CMS it's still in its infancy, sort of elementary stages. At this point, a lot of folks prefer using our user interface because they can see the benchmarks in all 3 categories, and they like to submit it as one submission. But it's okay if you decide that you want to do the IA and the ACI with CMS. It's just that we do have the option for you to do all 3, and in fact, most people like the one-stop shop. Data entry is improving every day. Now that we have our own API endpoint, QRDA3 files, we can customize. You still have the templates, which a lot of folks still like to use. And then at the very end, there's literally a button that says submit to CMS. And because we're linked up to their API, it's a 2-second thing. And you actually get an automatic, we send you an actual number that says this is your API submission. It's a screenshot of your data that's been submitted to CMS so that you can actually see that data. And then, of course, if you're choosing the 360 full program, you can actually see all the analytics. So we break it down by provider, by group, by measure, and you can actually see who's scoring what. And we even now have, if Julianne's still on the call, you'll be excited because I know you really wanted this. We have pivot tables, but they now have an export feature. So your data, you can, if you're good with pivot tables and you understand how to utilize them, you can rejig them around and do all sorts of things to them, but there's an export feature now, so you can print stuff out and export as well for the pivot tables. And then, of course, the dashboard continues to improve all the time, and we're working with our clients. You may be asked, as a matter of fact, many of you over time, hey, do you want to test this new aspect of our portal? We're developing this. We really do collaborate a lot with our partners because we want you to have the easiest, most simplistic experience and not have to deal with the burden, which is, yeah, CMS is trying to remove the burden from the clinicians, but we as a registry and QCDR are trying to do that even more. I mean, in fact, I think that's a huge part of our role is to be that intermediary to help you understand the program and to try to simplify things so that it's not a huge burden. You will see things like our dashboard when you log into our portal, and we actually have now, everybody that's on the call, we have an actual demo. So this is the purpose of this call today isn't to go through a demo on how to actually use the P360 portal. We just simply cannot fit it all in. But for those of you that want to understand, if you're either back and renewed and you're like, oh, I need a reminder of how to use the P360 portal, I haven't been in there in a couple of months. On our website, just click on the demo, and it's a brand new demo. We just updated it, I think, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and so it is the actual 2018 portal. And it's about 12 minutes, so you want to set aside about 12 minutes to look through that. But this is a little bit of the inside of our portal and our dashboard, selecting measures. We have a code selector, so if you really have no idea what measures you want to utilize for quality, you can actually put in your top CPT codes in here, and Measure Code Selector will reveal the most relevant measures for you. And then, like I said, very easy. I'm ready to submit. And there's a menu here, so this is where you can see all of your analytics and run things. So I would suggest for those of you that want to kind of get a better inside understanding of how the portal works to get started, what are QRDA3 files, how are the templates, how do those work, how do I upload data, click on our portal demo and take a look at that as well. Again, these are the options for sending data, so you can. This is good for folks that are doing the MIPS for Beginners program because you only have to get 15 points. So you're entering like a minimum amount of data. You can go and enter it directly into P360 portal. It's kind of like how you would enter data into the QPP website portal, if any of you have done that as well. It's simple. You're not going to do this if you have massive amount of clients. This is if, patients. You're going to do this if you're doing the MIPS for Beginners program. Most folks are using the template and the QRDA3. We do have an Encounter API endpoint, but what I would say, to be completely transparent, is that you do probably want a developer on your team as well that understands how to set up the API endpoint and understands a little bit of code. If you do have somebody in your practice, you're a larger practice, and you have those resources, or somebody in IT, the Encounter API endpoint for 2018 is really easy to set up, and I would suggest you have a conversation with us about that as well. We've had other conversations with folks that are looking at CCDA files, HL7 file format, so we can talk to you about customizing something in that sense, but most folks are utilizing these 3 options. So where are you in the process? It is 12 months that's required, and at this point in the year, you can sign up with us, get started now. If you have never done this before, I would suggest MIPS for Beginners. If you have already and you know, I've already renewed with P360 and I haven't actually gotten any data in, you're fine. But start now, though, because it really, like I said before with the feedback reports, our dashboard can't provide you with the feedback that CMS wants it to unless you've got some data into our portal. So even if you're just getting some of your ACI or IA data in and pick one quality measure and get some data in on that, got to get started with something, because really you don't want to be going back in and filling in the templates. And for the QRDA3 files, because that's all automatic, you can pull a QRDA3 file right now from January until right now. If you pull it out and dump it into our portal now, it's going to show you how you're scoring. So if you're not doing well, you have time for the rest of the year to actually make those improvements. So that's really, really important. Don't wait until the end to just dump all your QRDA3 files into the portal and then, oh my gosh, measure 5, like, oh, we were doing really bad on that. I didn't know that. Like, if you do it now, then you'll know so that you can make those improvements. Definitely want to decide if you're reporting individually as a group. If you're more than 2 providers, 2 or more providers, just so you know, everyone, I'll make this real easy. And if you need to know more, you don't understand why, ask us, but you're going to report as a group. Nobody reports individually anymore unless you are a solo practitioner or you're going to join a virtual group. So that's just something to keep in mind. Reporting as a group is way easier, way less cumbersome for so many reasons. So again, if you're on this call and you're a solo practitioner, it's fine. You're going to report individually, obviously, or you're going to join a virtual group. If you're 2 or more practitioners under a TIN, you are going to report as a group. Then you're going to pick your measures and start capturing your data, and then you're going to upload early and often into our portal. So it's really that simple. The data collection is where you really want to start getting on the ball now if you haven't already. So patient360.com, I'll toggle over to that because we're at time. And I also want you to feel free to email your questions to us because we didn't get to, I did weave a couple of questions in and I didn't see any more in the chat box, but Tamara, if you have any more now, I'll try to cover those for those folks that have remained on the call for an extra few minutes. For those folks that need to go, no worries, we've been recording this, so that's fine, but I have a few extra minutes and I can stay on for some Q&A for those folks that do want to stay on and ask some questions now. And then what we'll do is while Tamara, if you want to just shoot me over any questions that folks have, I'll pop over to the website so everybody can see where the demo is located and the NPI lookup tool and whatnot.
Thanks, Amanda. We have, I have one question that I will send over to you. Other than that, you've been able to weave them all in. Pretty impressive.
Great. That's good. Okay, good. Well, yeah, just shoot me that question, and just while you're doing that, folks, this is where our demo is. So you just click here, you enter your clinic practice details, and the demo will pop up, and you can watch it right there in real time. It's about 12 minutes. It will show you how to actually use the portal. Over here in Learning Resources, just wanted to bring everybody's attention because I know we went through very quickly. Oh yeah, what were those changes for 2018 again? Like what's different in the program? So you just want to pop over to our blog section, and there's a whole part that talks about essentially what do we need to know about 2018 reporting. So it's right here, and I just wanted to make everyone aware of that. This is really helpful too. These two final rule slides. No, but like you're not going to want to go through the entire final rule. Nobody has time for that. These slides are directly from CMS, and they do kind of break down the changes pretty easily, bite-sized changes. So you might want to just have this on your desktop so you can refer to it at one point or another if you're going to start reporting now. And this talks about all the same category changes I talked about just a little while ago. So again, if you need a refresh on this, feel free just to pop over to our website and go to that blog because it will tell you what all those changes are. And let's see, here's a question. I'm just going to read this question. Last year, a new fellow is not eligible, not mandatory to participate in MIPS, but we want to include that fellow's encounters in our TIN. Can we include that in our 51% submitted? Okay, a couple of little things for 2018. Okay, so 2017 is done. For 2018, I just wanted to let you know a point of clarification to the person who asked this question. Can we include that in our 51% submitted? It's actually 60% that needs to be submitted in 2018, so that's one of those little changes that CMS made. They bumped it up from 50% in 2017 to 60% of all of your patients in 2018. If that provider, if the fellow worked for you in 2018, so as in starting on January 1st and leaves halfway through the year, but you want to report those encounters, they are still part of, they're under the group TIN. So that you will know by looking in our portal and comparing scores that that provider has left. But when we send the data to CMS for the entire reporting year through the CMS API, they're seeing the results for the total TIN. They are not seeing a breakdown of which provider. So they're not going to know Mr. Fellow left halfway through the year. But it's important that you're only reporting on encounters from that fellow from 2018 because 2017 is done. Does that make sense? Are there any other follow-up questions for that?
Well, an important piece of clarification, Amanda, is how it follows people now, which is new.
Yep.
So that if you are reporting this year, if that fellow was to be working with you, because if they're in a fellowship, but they also have usually a license and they are usually internal medicine or family practice, that's something that they've already done, that person's TIN NPI will be following them. So if he or she did not do well, that will follow them to the next place they're going. So this is actually I think could potentially down the road be a legal implication to a practice that has somebody that may not have done well or got penalized. And this is new, so it hasn't had any precedent yet, but it's important to know that this now will follow you where you're going. And so I think reporting for that person is fine because you're not reporting in their fellowship training, you're reporting on the Medicare work that they were doing that was part of their overall experience within that practice. And if you're billing for their services and they are participating in Medicare, then you're allowed to report them, even if they don't meet the thresholds. The threshold just says who doesn't have to report. It doesn't mean that they can't report.
Yeah, and another thing that we learned too is that, and this is CMS being a little more flexible, which is cool. If the performance under the first TIN, under your TIN for that fellow was really, really good, and then he or she moves to another TIN in the same reporting year and their performance is terrible, CMS said that they take the better performing, believe it or not, if it's in the same reporting year. If it's not, then they won't. But if somebody moves within the same reporting year, they said they take the better of the two. And I will verify that because we have it in our frequently asked questions section, Julianne. So when you're in the portal, if you log into FAQs for 2018, there is a section called group reporting. Hop on over to that because what we did was we broke it down into a bunch of different scenarios that account for all of these nuances of if somebody leaves from this practice and then moves to this one and then what happens in year 2 and all that jazz. We actually have responses from CMS for each unique scenario. So take a look at that and then we can kind of reconvene and talk more about it if you still need clarification. So I think that we don't have any other questions in the chat box. We have gone 10 minutes over time, so I apologize for that. If there are additional questions, please do feel free to email us those questions. If you're ready to sign up, please do contact Heather because she'll help you figure out which program is going to be the best for you. If you have clinical questions, please let Tamara know, and we will have Doug reach out to you to try to provide guidance. We genuinely appreciate your interest. We're here to help. For those of you that were on the call today that may be members of an ACO, please do contact us because it's very, very simple for us to submit your web interface measures for you as well. We can do that for you. We just need to know that it's something that you're looking to do. So do reach out to us if you're an ACO and you're looking to have developers and an entity submit your web interface measures for you. Perhaps you don't have your own in-house developer. We can take care of that for you. So let us know. Please reach out to us. Thanks so much for joining us and for your time today. We do hope this was helpful. And again, send us questions through email if you have any questions at all. Take it easy.